An American explains what it is like living in Cyprus. I'm Walker Rowe, an American who has lived in Cyprus since 2019. I'm a freelance tech writer, so I can live where I want to, so I do. I lived in Spain for 6 months, France for 3 months, Tunisia for 8 months, Malaysia for 3 months, and in Chile for 6 years. So I have a lot of experience living in different places. Let me tell you what Cyprus is like. Intro. Cyprus, the land of souvlaki and the Shell Company, is an island of 1 million people in the Mediterranean. It is known for its clear blue waters, sunny skies, Greek culture, and a safe place to hide ill-gotten gains. The first part of that is what the travel brochure says. Let's look further. Location. Cyprus is south of Turkey, west of Lebanon and Syria, and north of Israel. So it is surrounded by hostile forces or countries that are falling apart or under military threat from their neighbors. We are so close to Lebanon that when a fertilizer storage facility blew up in Beirut, we felt it here. And at least one rocket fired in the war against Syria landed here. Fortunately, it blew up before it hit the ground. Athens is far, but Crete, which is the bottom of Greece, is near. We get dust. It comes from Egypt and Libya. Those are not too close, but apparently the dust usually comes from that direction. I am a swimmer, so I observe the weather. The winds here are usually from the southwest, west, or northwest. Egypt and Libya are not exactly south. They are southwest. Cyprus is warm and sunny about 7 months of the year. Look at this graphic. It says everything you need to know about when it is pleasant and when it is not in one shot. I made this by crunching 10 years of weather data. The chart shows the average rain and temperature by month. It's color-coded, so you can see at a glance when it is sunny and warm and when it's dark and rainy. Of course, cold is a relative term. Someone from Estonia might think it is warm when the rest of us are freezing. On the coast, it never gets below freezing. In the highest mountains, it snows. In the mountain villages, it occasionally snows, but it melts straight away. The winter here lasts from December to April. It rains in the winter, and there are lots of clouds and wind with sunny days too. In the spring and summer, there is no rain. It is very humid along the coast. Most people will find July and August oppressive. If you come from the UK, Germany, or the USA, you would think the weather is perfect. But I have lived in so-called Mediterranean climate countries for more than 10 years. I find it at times freezing, and at times so hot I cannot go outside. In such countries, the houses do not have good heating systems and no central air conditioning, so it tends to be the same weather inside as outside. That's not entirely true, but I feel cold in winter and hot in summer. In spring, it is perfect, like San Diego, sunny but not hot. In summer, you cannot grow tomatoes without shade. The sun will broil them. I gave up trying to grow flowers in pots. Now my entire garden is cactus. The only negative thing here is mosquitoes. You will not have those in all places. But I live north of Paphos in Peia. There are banana plantations here and fruit grape vineyards. Their irrigation system there give mosquitoes a place to breed. So even though I live in this nice Mediterranean place with a so-called Mediterranean climate, I have to leave the window closed. So live in Aphrodite Hills if you can afford it. There's no water and no mosquitoes there. Divided by war. The British usually leave a mess when their colonial government picks up and leaves. In Palestine, it was up to the Jews and Palestinians to fight it out. In Kashmir, Hindus are still fighting Muslims. And in Cyprus, Turks and Christians came to blows. In the 1960s, when Britain gave Cyprus independence to ensure peace between Turkish and Greek peoples, they wrote in their constitution that the minority Turkish Cypriots could veto any law passed by the majority Greek Cypriots. Turkish Muslim Cypriots were 20% of the population. Each village could declare itself Turkish or Greek and fly either the Turkish or Greek flag. And the village had 2 mayors. It's sort of like a marriage with 2 husbands and 1 wife. At times, there will be trouble. This arrangement worked until 1974. Then Greek military soldiers joined with nationalists here and launched a coup. They wanted Cyprus to join Greece. The Greek president fled the country. Turkey invaded to protect the Turkish minority, they said. They took about 40% of the country. They still have not given it back. The United Nations and Turkish troops are still here. So are the British. Britain kept the corner of Cyprus for its military base. It is probably useful that the British are still here. Gives the Israelis somewhere to practice. Today, I went to see the statue put up to honor my former neighbor's father. In 1974, someone let off a bomb in his Cathekis mountain village. The British rounded up the boys and men. When they came to this man's house, he took out a knife and killed 3 British soldiers. So, he became a hero. The sea. The sea is the main reason I moved here because I do open water swimming. I lived in Chile for 6 years, Spain for 6 months, France for 3 months, and Tunisia for 8 months. In all of these places, the water is perfect, except you cannot swim in the winter. Here, the water never goes below 15.5 degrees Celsius. Below 15, you can get hypothermia. It's cold, but cold is good for distance swimming. I don't swim in July and August because the water is too hot. Because it's cold and because I swim far out and dive off the rocks, I am usually the only person in the sea. So, it's like I have my own private island. In fact, I do swim out to a couple of islands here. So, don't come and spoil it. Go to Coral Bay and sit next to some drunken and naked tourists and pay to rent a chair. All I need is a free rock from which to propel myself and the wide open sea before and underneath me. At times, the newspaper reports that someone drowns here in rip currents. I wonder how that is possible, as you can float in salt water all day if you don't panic. There are only a few places here where there is any current at all. The Mediterranean Sea is like a lake. In fact, it was a lake until water came rushing in at Gibraltar. On most days, the sea is calm. This is not like the rough Atlantic Ocean. But in winter, the waves do get huge. This is when I can't swim. If it's raining, I go. If the waves threaten to dash me on the rocks, I don't. No fish. I consulted the arbiter of truth, Google. It said the reason the Mediterranean is so blue is because there is no plankton. So there's no food to attract something larger than that. There is a reason they call it the Dead Med. Every day I swim about 400 meters to 1.5 kilometers in the sea. So I know there are no fish as I can see to the bottom. There's no large fishing fleet here, yet I see people go fishing. Feel like telling people fishing from the rocks that they are wasting time. The only medium-sized fish I have seen are jellyfish, maybe 3 times, and turtles, maybe 25 times. The largest fish I saw actually swam up and bit me, nipped me. There were 5 of them. They came to taste me. They were maybe 20 centimeters long. I looked at pictures on the internet, but never figured out what kind they were. My father had boats, big tugboats, and a shrimp boat. I always had a boat too, so I know fish. When I say there is no fish here, I mean there is nothing bigger than your hand and nothing worth eating or big enough to eat. There are no grouper, flounder, wahoo, king mackerel. In South Carolina, when you drop your fishing line in the water, a fish bites it almost instantly. Not here. In the Mediterranean, people eat sardines, octopus, and squid. In America, when we caught squid in our nets on our shrimp boat, we would throw them away. They are tough. They have no flavor. Octopus also. We would not even use squid as bait, because when it dries in the sun, you cannot get it off your hook without a very sharp knife. It's like leather. So I think people living around the Mediterranean eat these things because they have no other choice. In fact, the most commonly sold fish here are raised in floating farms off Larnaca. That is pretty sad to live on an island and have to farm your own fish. Ethnicity. I watch some Greek television. I don't watch Cypriot because it's not available on the system I use. Greek people are Caucasian. They are white. Cypriots are racially different people. They have white or olive skin and black hair. There are no blonde people here, only fake blondes. Cypriots look more Middle Eastern than European. The men have mustaches sometimes. They look like Zorba. Fortunately, the women don't look like Zorba. Zorba the Greek was filmed in nearby Crete. Like most women everywhere, Cypriots women are so beautiful they are the kind of girls you want so much, it makes you sorry. Village origins. Practically 100% of Cypriots come from villages. What does this mean? In Paphos, you cannot tell where one town stops and another starts. but each little place is called a village. An American might say suburb, except that implies there is a large city next to it. But the villages here are really mountain villages, which is what the word village is supposed to mean. 2 generations ago, before discount airlines, Cypriots were very poor people. They lived in mountain villages like cathekas. Think about that. There was no flat land there, so you could only grow grapes and olives. There was no manufacturing, no rich soil, just rocks. No large-scale farming. To earn a living, you might have kept bees and made honey or knitted clothes. But then tourists started coming maybe 50 years ago when it became cheap to do so on low-cost airlines. Suddenly, people who used to wear used clothes and forage in the forest for food became land-rich. They gave up their mules for a Mercedes. Now they build hotels and sell real estate in exchange for passports to Russia and Chinese criminals, or they rent ATVs. The villages are abandoned. The schools close because the children are gone, yet the families keep these houses. Most are too difficult to sell as their heirs are still arguing over who owns the land, so they go in the summer. Cyprus does not sell passports anymore because Al Jazeera caught on tape the vice president arranging a passport for a Chinese criminal. But Cypriots still think the only way to make money is with tourism. This has led to overdevelopment. The island is covered with abandoned houses and buildings. They are now owned by the bank because the owner or developer could not pay the mortgage. The other businesses here are shipping and forex. Forex usually means foreign exchange, like buying and selling foreign currencies, but here it means trading any kind of security, crypto, bond, whatever. The shipping business in Cyprus operates tax-free, but to say there is shipping here does not mean they build or repair ships. There's no noise of deckhands chipping rust. Instead, Cypriots arrange their cargo contracts. That's called the ship management business. That is why you see so many ships anchored off Limassol. They are still idling away for the next gig. The British. Cyprus was a British colony. They pressured the Turks into handing it over, promising to protect them from the Russians. But World War I started and Turkey made the mistake of joining the wrong side. The British are still here, even after giving Cyprus its independence. The British are here mainly as retirees. Most are as old as Aphrodite. It's much fun for Americans to mock the British. They are easy to spot. They are colored pink by the sun because their pale skin has never felt such sun in Cornwall. And you can see them in the bars drinking at 9 a.m. I never saw anyone drink in the morning until I came to Europe. In America, we tend to think of the British as being very intelligent because we watch a lot of PBS and Masterpiece Theater. They have such lovely accents. But having moved here, I have discovered that the British are for the most part just as stupid as most of the people where I come from, accent notwithstanding. They read Pulp Fiction, discarding them at the charity shops after having spent an entire afternoon reading lowbrow literature. Then they pick up the Daily Mail to find out what the King and Queen and other unemployed royals are doing. But they also follow the royals like fawning groupies in the Telegram, which is the paper for the educated. None of this makes any sense to me since I cannot understand them. The women all sound like Mary Poppins. As for the Scottish, they should be required to wear subtitles. The other Europeans. In this part of Europe, you don't hear Spanish and French or Italian like in the western parts of Europe. Instead, it's a polyglot of Polish, Estonian, Hebrew, Georgian, Latvian, Czech, Lithuanian, Romanian, Serbian, Bulgarian, German, Danish, Russian, etc. But go beyond the beach, and you will find there are lots of young Europeans here who are working as digital nomads. They sell stuff on Amazon. One guy is trying to corner the German market for legal marijuana. Others are earning their living writing computer games. You will find them in places like Huge Space Digital Nomad Office Space. There, good ideas for new businesses and products are literally jumping off the walls. These are the kind of immigrants Cyprus should encourage. The only thing odd about them is their diet and exercise. They tend to be vegan, yoga advocates, and fans of HIIT, high-intensity interval training exercise. Parking. This one is easy. In Cyprus, sidewalks are for parking and streets are for walking. One man in Nicosia in a wheelchair got killed when he had to get in the street to go around cars on the sidewalk. I saw the same thing happen here in Paphos. So I explained to the British man in a wheelchair who had been blocked that he could call the traffic police. I used to call the traffic police all the time. Now I just do like the Cypriots and park in the street or on the sidewalk. Wine. I should say something about the wine, because I know a lot about wine. I wrote 3 books on vineyards, farmed 2 vineyards, and was part owner of a winery in Virginia, and worked in wineries in Virginia and Chile to work on these books. I was a wine judge and have been on television and radio talking about wine. The great thing about Europe is wherever you go, they have grapes that are native to that region. So you have French grapes in France, Italian grapes in Italy, etc. In California, Chile, or Australia, they plant European grapes. In America, this is because Native American grapes are not suitable for making wine. They would taste awful, like bubble gum. In Cyprus, the white wines are better than the reds. This is because it is easier to make white wine. So you cannot usually find a bad white wine here. So you have to know which red wines are good before you buy those. There are plenty of bad red ones. If you want a simple rule of thumb, don't drink anything that costs less than €8. People who make red wines or less than €8 often cheat. Oak wine barrels are expensive. So instead of putting wine in an oak barrel, they put oak staves into the stainless steel tank. It's complete fraud. I'm not saying they do that here, but I lived in a village for 1 year and helped my neighbor with his vineyard. I saw how the other vineyards in the area farmed their grapes. They had no irrigation. So the quality of the fruit is subject to the vagaries of the weather, and they did not drop fruit. You're supposed to prune the vineyard 3 or 4 times per year and then throw away some of the fruit so that what is left is the best quality. That is how you make premium wine. For white wine drink, Zimonsteria. Try Levkata for red. For either, buy Sangaridis or Vasilikon. Architecture. One of the things most noticeable about Cyprus is that everything is relatively new. There are no ancient villages here. There are no winding streets lined with cafes, no trams, no tree-lined promenades, no medieval anything. The only old things are really old, like from the Neolithic, Mycenaean, or Roman times. Everything here looks new. Even the cathedrals look new. In fact, they all look exactly the same. They use the same exact design for anything newer than 100 years old. There are some ancient churches. These are in general not used anymore. There are no open mosques for obvious reasons. This does not mean the Cypriots tore down what came before them. It simply means there was nothing there. In Limassol, there are lots of tall apartment buildings, whose apartments have mainly been sold to Russians. But since World War II, Russians are not coming. So will these tall buildings sit empty and rot like so many other buildings here? This lack of anything rustic is the one thing that makes Spain, Italy, Greece, and France look more European. This place looks like Florida, USA, or worse, Benidorm, Spain. Refugees. Cyprus has more refugees than any other EU country. They are 4% of the population now, and the vast majority of them are fake refugees. Some come on boats, but most simply walk over from northern Cyprus across the green zone. You can fly to occupied northern Cyprus from most places with no visa and no questions asked. Cyprus cannot send them back when they cross over because they are a signatory to international refugee treaties. That means Cyprus must take people and process them through the refugee system regardless from whence they came. Some end up in refugee camps. Most move to the towns and villages. Then their cases wind through the process for years. If they get denied in one category, they can apply for another, and they can appeal. I know this not just from the newspaper, but from people I know personally. They get a stipend from the government. That can be €1,000 for a mom with 2 kids. There is growing animosity toward refugees here because so many are abusing the system. First, Cyprus turns down about 100% of refugees from India, Bangladesh, and Georgia. Second, most are single males traveling alone. The only refugees they accept are Syrian and now Ukrainians. About 20% of Cameroons are accepted. My housekeeper is from Cameroon. Boko Haram is active there. So, it is genuinely dangerous if you live in the wrong place, but there is something wrong with her story. She says she wants to go back and visit. She is supposed to fear for their life, yet she wants to visit. I know other refugees who have been here for many years. They get denied under one category, appeal, then apply under another category. This can go on for many years. The situation has turned violent in certain areas like Emba and Chlorakis. Chlorakis actually set a limit that 20% of the town could be immigrants. They turned off water to one apartment, hoping to drive them out. Fights break out between Indians and Bangladeshi. My friends tell me Muslim men harass their girlfriends and wives. Cypriot dialect. I am at level A2 in my study of Greek. My teacher is in Thessaloniki, so I am learning Greek as it is spoken in Greece. This is one of 4 dialects. Pontic Greeks live in Armenia, Ukraine, and Georgia. In Crete, they speak a dialect that is somewhat similar to Cypriot. And then there is Cypriot Greek. Finally, there is Greek Greek. Cyprus was never part of what you would call Greece. They speak Greek here because they are descended from the Mycenaean culture, meaning pre-Greek. Think Homer. But Greece fell apart when Alexander the Great from Macedonia conquered everything. Alexander died. Then his siblings fought over the empire. Greek-speaking Egyptians and then Greek-speaking Romans, aka Byzantine Empire, took over. Venice was somewhere in the middle, then came the Muslims and next the British. So Cyprus was cut off from Greek proper for most of its history and really never a part of that. The language here is the same written language as modern Greek, but there are lots of differences. I cannot really tell you the differences since I don't understand Cypriots at all. The little bit of Greek I know is Athens Greek. Dogs and cats. Cypriots in general don't like dogs. This makes no sense as the island is overrun with stray cats. I think one reason they might not like dogs is that this country was ruled by Ottoman Turks for 6 centuries, right up to World War I. Turks are Muslims. The Quran says dogs are dirty. Cypriots are and have been Christian since the Roman Empire during this time, but obviously, when the ruling people have rules against dogs, this will affect everyone. Work ethic. In Paphos, there is a project to construct a walkway to let pedestrians walk over the top of an archaeological park. But the work is going so slowly, it will itself be part of the archaeological park in 1,000 years, if and when they finally finish it. The town of Paphos tore up one main street here in town to replace the sideway and repair the road. But it took so long to do the work that businesses along that stretch of road went out of business because no one could even walk to their stores. In Greek, they say, siga siga. It means slowly, slowly. In Paphos, they want to put in a so-called smart parking system. The vendor says this is their first project. That does not inspire confidence. They say the $1.2 million project will change the world. Yet 2 years after signing the contract, the world has not changed, as nothing in Paphos has changed. You still have to put a €1 coin into the rusty parking meter. You cannot put in a €2 coin. You cannot pay with your phone. Yet in Cyprus, the law says all companies must accept electronic payments. I'm a computer programmer. You could do this project with a simple app to accept payment. Then the police can look up the license plate and see if the car has paid. That might cost $50,000. That would be smart parking. What we have now is dumb parking. I think they write parking tickets on papyrus, vellum, or maybe marble. Cypriots aspire to work government jobs, especially join the teachers' union. Then they can be mediocre for life and knock off early. In America, we say that the government is the employer of last resort. This means only people who could not get jobs there work there. No melting pot. We say America is a melting pot. Immigrants might show up speaking Swedish, but 1 generation later, they are watching Duck Dynasty and firing AR-15s for fun. Not true in Europe. It's the same here as I saw in Spain. Different cultures live side by side but apart. In Alicante, Spain, if a child wants to learn English, they go 5 tram stops to Benidorm. That's not much difference between private and public schools here. The private ones are not better than the public ones. They are just for those who don't want to be bothered with the Greek language. And why should they? They will go back to Germany when they graduate. I know a lot about the schools here as I teach teenage kids computer programming at my own online school, Apatia Academy. I always ask them to let me see the books they use and the curriculum they follow. If people behaved like this in America, we would say they are racist. But in Europe, it's standard fare. You might even say it is necessary. Such behavior let the Finns and Latvians keep their language despite being overrun by the Soviets. And Georgians still speak Georgia after having been invaded by everyone who owns a rifle. Of course, this is true in Cyprus too. If not, Cypriots would be Turkish-speaking Muslims. This says a lot about the strength of culture here. But it's kind of sad. Most British people I know don't even have any Cypriot friends. I tend to go native where I go. Russians. Before the war with Ukraine started in 2022, Russian warships made ports of call in Cyprus. 40% of Cyprus real estate was Russian. 20% of tourists were Russian. Lawyers and accountants made piles of money, turning rubles into euros. All that came crashing down with the war. So did the Russian flags flying over the hotels here, if grudgingly. Now we have two types of Russians in Cyprus. The first are older retired people who grew up in the Soviet Union. Some had been high officials with the Soviet government, with drivers and dachas, unaffected by sanctions and with their money safely outside Russia. They are somewhat pro-Putin. Then there are the young Russians who have come to Cyprus to work as digital nomads. They are horrified by what their country has done. Maybe their parents back in Russia support Putin and his war against Ukraine, but they do not. They tell me they don't want to live in North Korea. They are on Facebook writing comments against Putin, but carefully. Some of them are stuck with their money in Russia. Others have built businesses in other parts of Europe, so they get paid there. They are almost stateless people now. They don't want to go back to Russia, so they are making sure their immigration papers are in order. They pay taxes in Cyprus. Their kids are in school here. They speak Russian softly in the cafes. After some time, this section of this video will become dated, but Cyprus in the past got closer to Russia than to the West. They grudgingly went along with EU sanctions. They banned Russian flights. But they did not hand over Russian weapons to Ukraine when the UK asked them, and they insisted, along with Malta and Greece, that the Cypriot-flagged and often Russian-owned oil tankers could continue to ferry Russian oil to world markets. The Russian influence on Cyprus became clear in the 2012 to 2013 banking crisis. Cyprus banks were ready to go bust because they invested big in Greek bonds. Why anyone would put their money in anything Greek is beyond me. Greece could not pay, so Cyprus turned to the EU for a bailout. The U.S. got involved because of money laundering concerns. To make itself solvent, Cyprus seized all deposits at the Bank of Cyprus and Laiki Bank above 100,000 euros. Those persons were given stock instead. In one fell swoop, Cyprus staved off collapse, but when the dust settled, it was made clear that more than half the money in the banks was Russian. Credits. This video is brought to you by Hypatia Academy Cyprus. We teach teenagers in Cyprus how to program computers. If you enjoyed this video, you can read more about Cyprus on the Facebook page, Cyprus Explained.